about. Today is about follow-through, and so I'll let you get to know me just a little bit, and then I'll zoom in on what I think we're going to talk about, and we'll customize as we go with each of you here. So first name is Brian, and I've been working with this ministry since 1985, so I think that's in the 30 or 40-year range to have the same job. That's pretty unusual. Been to 27 countries, working almost always with short-term missions as the reason that I'm there. Can be anything from consulting all the way up to crisis management with Haiti and tsunamis in Japan or in Katrina area. So been all over the world and in a lot of different situations related to short-term missions, sometimes leading teams, sometimes on teams, sometimes preparing for or hosting teams. So it doesn't make me an expert, it just makes me experienced, which I've had both good and bad experiences. So when I talk today, I'll be sometimes using a story or two, usually out of having learned things, hopefully usually the right way, but sometimes the wrong way. I helped write the Standards of Excellence. How many of you guys have heard of those? Standards of Excellence in Short-Term Mission. So SIND, I know, is a member of SOE. Standards of Excellence, I will refer to them, and I do have handouts already for you if you'd like to have those to take with you, and I've got enough that you could take more than one if you want. These are the Standards of Excellence in English. These are in Spanish if you have a Spanish-speaking congregation. I'd like to spread those around that way. So let me go ahead and pass those out. You can go ahead and take one anyway. The 7 standards are intended to be kind of a roadmap for 2 philosophical, theological aspects of short-term mission. You do these: God-centeredness and a commitment to empowered partnerships. Then it should affect the other 5 standards, which are chronological or in sort of a practical, operational level. How you do your training, your recruiting, your follow-through, and how you relate in designing the programs with the mission field. That's all in the second set, the second 5 group. So I helped write those. We did that because there are like 2 million people. This might be interesting when you go back to your churches. Sin kind of knows this information, but about 2 million people a year go out and do short-term missions from North America. It's a massive movement, but like a fifth or less are actually really doing a great job with partnership, with strategy, with training, and cultural preparedness. So I remember when I first heard some of those statistics, I was like, well, that's good. A fifth of 2 million. That's really pretty good, right? But then I got to doing the other math, the other half, or the other portion of that, which is 4/5 who aren't. 1.6 million goers a year are doing what I would call the default mode of short-term mission. They're winging it. They just go and do it because they want to help. They love to hold babies. They love to get to another country because they've already been to these 2, and there's one more they always wanted to go to. This is not always helping. And so a lot of us across the nation were thinking, how do we make sure that churches, schools, and organizations understand how to do a better job than we've been doing? One of the phrases we use a lot is, people don't know what they don't know. If you go somewhere, 2/3 of the world is this way, and you say, how did it go? Are you glad we came? What do you think they're going to say? Are you glad we came? They will say yes, because they would rather lie, we call it that in our country, than to offend, which is what they would think of it as being. So they tell you nice things. And you come back home patting yourself on the back, saying, look what we did. They loved us. But on the mission field, they're trying to recover from you. And this is unfortunately so normal. And I'll just, since we have so many churches in the room, I want to be careful how I say this. Out of all of those 2 million goers, 100,000 churches in America, according to Christianity Today, are mobilizing short-termers. 3,500 organizations and 1,500 schools. The biggest offender of this default mode of short-term missions, guess who it is? It's the church, who thinks she knows what she's doing. We've been going there for years to the Dominican. It's always good. They tell us that. But you're wreaking havoc. And so how can we help unify a really disconnected movement in short-term missions? The standards were born. They create a small roadmap. So they also come, if you're really wanting to go deep, they come in this booklet. It's a downloadable one on our website, but I also have printed versions here. You're welcome to pick up one of those if you'd like. Let me just tell you how they're organized real quick. It's a freebie. The standard itself is like 2 words, God-centered, and then underneath there's 3 points. Under each of those 3 points, there are key quality indicators, or KQIs. There's a ton of stuff. It can be overwhelming if you don't understand. Start at the top. See if you can't understand those. Use those first 3 major components, which are listed, I think, just in bullet point form on the printout I gave you. And go deeper where you can, when you can. Don't get too far in or you're going to go crazy, especially if you're a perfectionist and a high achiever, which most of you are. That's oftentimes who leads STM stuff. you like your checklist and you want to be everything to everybody, this list will drive you absolutely into the grave. So be careful when you get into it. Start to prayerfully select where you're going to do things. Now, standard number 7 has to do with follow-through. So I'm going to get to that in just a few minutes, but now you're starting to realize how it's going to fit together. And I should also mention, now that Mission Works has been launched, with Mission Connection and 4 other ministries under it, Standards of Excellence is now known as Mission Excellence. So the rebranding hasn't happened on the pages yet. But yes. Short term would typically be like 4 days to 3 years. Some people call it short term and midterm. Today, young people call 2 years long term. Right? So, but yeah, I'd say most of the time when I'm talking today, I'll be looking at a few years and less. So, good question. Thank you. Also helped write the next mile, which if, I can't remember, you got that curriculum there, which is mostly geared around follow-through. At the end, about 30 organizations, I was able to collaborate those ministries, churches, sending entities, etc., together to write this curriculum. You'll find this today, because I'm going to be talking about follow-through. You cannot do effective follow-through if you didn't start at the beginning with that in mind. So that booklet that you have there, The Next Mile, includes pre-field and on-field stuff in order to do a good job with post-field. Today, my goal is to give you guys a handful of just really practical tools, ideas, concepts, because you can't get a ton in an hour, but I can give you a few things that hopefully be a really big help for you. And by the way, my wife and I have 3 daughters. They all married amazing Christian men who love Jesus. They've all been having kids, so we have 6 grandkids. That's my family. Forgot that's been sitting up there for you to look at and wonder what that's all about. But that's them. We just took that at the pumpkin patch. Where I live, we have fall colors. We have pumpkins in the field, and we have to get dressed really warm to go outside and do pictures outdoors. Yeah, it's a little foreign. I know. So I grew up in Scottsdale, actually, and also Tempe. So for me, this is like old home. I feel at home when I'm anywhere in the desert. Where this is not. I don't feel as home. It's my family lives there, so I'm stuck. Portland, Oregon. Up in the Portland, Oregon area. Okay, so now Mission Works is the parent organization through a family of ministries, of which there's 5 of them. I'm going to be talking today from the perspective of mission excellence. This is the standards related to short-term mission sending, and in particular, standard number 7 on follow-through. Mission excellence is helping churches, organizations, and school become really excellent by applying the better standards. You can find all this on the website. It's MissionWorks.Global, or you could go to MissionExcellence.Global. We are really blessed to get the .global this year. It just had come out when we were getting ready to rebrand everything. So, okay, I'll skip those for the sake of time. So today's workshop was billed this way. Serving together again, the idea of it not just being a one-off thing, and debriefing and follow-through that lasts. The way it's written in here is leveraging a mission trip for long-term change, right? So that's what I'm going to try to give you guys some tools for today. I'll double-check when we come back to the end to make sure that we feel like we're getting there. I also don't even know where I put my phone. It's over here. What time are we supposed to be done? 2:30? 2 o'clock. Who said that? Oh, panic. 2:30. So if somebody wants to give me a 5-minute warning, that'd help me because there's no clock in the room here. Do you have a volunteer for that? 5-minute warning. 2:25, make sure I'm landing the plane. Somebody be brave. Okay, you're the clock watcher. Okay, I realize this screen's small, and sometimes the fonts that I'm using, they would work great on a big projector, but it's a little tiny. So I will point, and I'll also read out some things that matter. The goal of short-term missions. Now, so I've been doing this since 1985, right? So I've been working with a lot of denominations across the country. Many, like Send, and like the one I originally came from, believed that short-term missions should be the catalyst or pipeline to long-term missions. Churches began to own it with the idea that these people could become long-term missionary workers. If that's true, we have a problem. Let me show you why. Only about 7%, this says here that these numbers are generalities. Okay, there's some data to back up, but if anywhere, round down, round up, whatever you want to do, only about 7% of short-termers are going to go into something longer, and out of those midterm workers, maybe only 25% of them will go on to something longer. Do simple math. Out of 100 short-termers, 10 might go on to something midterm. Only 2 of those would go on to long-term. If we measure a pipeline to long-term mission as our success for short-term missions, 98 didn't and 2 did make it. How are we doing as an industry? Badly, right? But I would say it's not the right question to be asking. This isn't the goal of short-term missions. I think we're getting smarter about that now. I want to present to you what I actually think would be the goal of short-term mission, but let me also talk about the demographics of short-term missionaries. First of all, some of your short-termers, you don't ever want them to go anywhere again. Am I right? How do you keep them from signing up next time? So let's take those out of the equation. We also have some that we can't keep track of. They're out of reach. They left our church. They left our organization. In some cases, somebody gets married, and when she changes her last name, it never got changed in our database. You don't have access to everybody all the time. But out of what's left, this is where I think we start to focus in on our goal. Yes, some of them will do midterm and long-term. Some of them will. But I want to affect all of them. These are the ones I want to invest in. And the notes, I didn't give you notes. Look at that. You can pass those around. There's actually a little spot right in this space, right here under this parenthesis where you can write the notes. I'll wait till you get your page out there. It's probably page 2 or 3. This is important. This is what I think the goal should be. And all of my slides are essentially there for you. Only some are fill-in, because in an hour, I don't want to waste time with the fill-in stuff. I try to give you guys everything you might need to take with you.
So much better than what I drew.
I'm so sorry. Usually there's 2 of us in here, and one, of course, is at the back door handing out. I just completely forgot. I don't. So anyway, go to the page that looks like this one. It should have the big red block on the back of it. And in this little space right here, you can write in there, develop missional Christians. This is what I'd like to suggest should be the goal for you doing short-term missions. Yes, it should affect your church. Yes, it should affect the short-term mission the mission field where you're serving. And it should affect the short-termer themselves. I'm going to get to all of that. But if that becomes the reason you're doing your short-term mission is to develop missional Christians, that means they're going to be better about neighbor outreach, coworker outreach. They're going to serve on missions committees. They're going to pray different, give different, serve different, right? We're trying to bring about a life change in a human being, not just make them a long-termer. I hope some of them will become long-termers. After my luncheon today, I'm hoping some of them will have a real burden for the unengaged, unreached people groups. Not just the unreached, but the unengaged ones. There's no one there yet. Out of all this, maybe someone in my church over the years I'm doing short-term mission might end up there. But my focus will be on all of the ones I have access to and want access to change their life. So in the book, Shaped by God's Heart, Milford said that a missional person reproducing communities of authentic disciples, being equipped as missionaries sent by God to live and proclaim His kingdom in their world. A few key thoughts here. Producing communities, not just rogue individuals who have random ideas of what they're just going to go do. They're part of something. Authentic. Not people. I've met so many people who just wanted another flag in their flag stand. I've never been to Ireland, so I'll do a short-term mission there. They're not going as authentic, transformed, gospel-carrying Christians who are in service. They're just going to get another trip, right? We need people in community who are authentic, really relationally authentic. And they're equipped. How many people are sent out without proper equipping? 4/5 of 2 million a year, possibly. We've got to be equipping. And they're going to be sent. It's a call. I love his definition altogether. You're going to live and you're going to proclaim His kingdom in their world, wherever they are. It could be working at a tire company. It could be teaching in a school. It could be in Afghanistan as a missionary. Wherever their world is, they need to be part of a community and they're authentic, they're equipped, and they're called of God to go. This to me would be missional. Well, that's a pretty high call for the action of short-term mission. And you're thinking, well, I just am like, sometimes I feel more like a travel agent. I'm buying the tickets, getting hotel reservations, and making sure people raise their money, which is a real pain. And that's all I can do to get them out the door. I know. But what I think you can do, working smarter, not harder, I said it in the previous session, knowledge is power. With the right stuff in your hands, you can become a powerhouse to begin to deliver this. So I'm hoping to give you a little bit of that today. Okay? One other word picture that you might want to take back to your teams, whatever. Most short-term missions, short-term mission number 1 in this example, on the timeline of life doesn't necessarily have a goal like a missional Christian. If anything, they might have something like make them a missionary. So I would say they're near goals, like goals. They're maybe ambiguous. Therefore, you kind of expect people, they will have had their life before the short-term mission. Then this dot happens on their timeline. It's the mission. And then they're, I guess, supposed to go back to what they were doing before. But I want to tell you they can't. They've seen things, felt things, experienced relationships, spiritual warfare. Never done that before. And all we do is let them come back home because we're already starting to work on next year. These poor short-termers. This is not a bueno situation, right? Not a good situation. So I'm going to suggest what I'm going to teach you about today on the timeline of life. The short-term mission still happens, but God's already at work in their life. This is a journey that they're on. This short-term mission now is just becoming one more thing on this timeline of life that God has for them. And our goal is going to share the one in Scripture that talks about bringing people to a place of more Christ-like living. It includes mentoring, pre-ministry events, training mission, post-ministry. It's in little tiny print in your handout too. But you get the general sense of what I'm after here. In Psalm 84, it says, "Blessed are those whose strength is in you and who have set their hearts on pilgrimage." Every time I hear somebody say, "I think the Lord is beginning to do something here," I'm like, He's bigger than that. It started a century ago or three. This church in this spot, on this orchard, this grove, it was in His eye a long time ago. And what it does in this community and who comes in, He's already at work. I love that. It's a pilgrimage. And our crossing paths today, maybe the only time any of us ever see, well, you three go to the same church, but the only time we all get to see each other, but this little intersection was part of what He's already at work doing. It wasn't just the beginning of something that wasn't thought of before, right? Pilgrimage. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, I'm not going to read the whole verse, but you'll see a theme, which I've put in red here. Where it writes in here, I'm going to run in such a way, it's active. I'm going to go and do. It's on purpose. I'm going to go into strict training. It's on purpose. Do I not have that one in your handout? Oh my goodness, you better write this one down then. 1 Corinthians 9, 24 through 27. It contrasts this doing it all on purpose and all the hard work that comes with it. It contrasts it in the same passage. "I do not run like a man running aimlessly. I do not fight like a man just beating the air. No. What do? I beat my body and make it my slave." This is on purpose again. And I just think this is a phenomenal illustration of what it takes for us to do stuff. There's a chapter 1, I think, near the end of Colossians, where it talks about the fact that I labor with the strength that God provides to present every man or woman as they should be in Christ. I work hard by the strength that God gives me to do it. And yes, it's going to be hard work, but let me get you to some of the right tools to do it. So, philosophically, we can't just think of debriefing, which most people describe as that meeting with international food, exchange of pictures, and sharing a story. That's the most common thing across from coast to coast. Yeah, we debrief our people. Or, we gave them a book when they came back. So we did our debriefing. It sort of implies like a one time and you did your thing. So I'm going to talk to you philosophically about the fact that when you swing a golf club or throw a football or throw a baseball, it's important how you start the throw itself and where your hand or your golf club ends up at the end, the follow-through side of a throw. So I'm not phenomenal at golf or football, but I do know that if I swing my golf club badly, like this, I may end up in a hook or a slice, depending on which way I end up finishing out my swing. If I throw a football like this, I can hit my target, but if I throw it like this, which most people do, it wobbles off to the side. They're like, "I'm just no good at this." It's because you haven't been trained in where to start, how to throw, and where your hand should end up to be able to have a successful toss. So I'm going to use sports as my analogy here, okay? And instead of having the pre-swing and then the swing and the post-swing for the moment, I'm going to talk about pre-field, a series of meetings, activities, study, training, and curriculum. That's going to be pre-field. And in it needs to be the kind of stuff that sets you up for success later on. Just like a person in sports has to learn how to throw that way. They start their throw really good. Now, I put a series of meetings in here. It's not like a one-time. And I don't think you should have people just simply register for a trip or sign up for a trip. They need to apply. They need to be approved. They need to achieve certain things, completing a written testimony that's been memorizing verses, attending 4 out of the 5 meetings. And if you're more than that, you can't go. Attending, as I'll say later on, your debriefing meetings. It's mandatory. We set the stage pre-field. Make it work for them. Because just like the Bible says, I beat my body. Nobody should be on an easy free ride on this short-term mission. I signed up. I'm going to go. I get to my country. I love the food. I'll even learn the language, and I'll be an expert on the country. How many people come back thinking they did that? Then you have on-field, which as you go has the ministry, but should include debriefings along the way. Not the one at the end, but every day you can debrief. There's so many experiences that happen. I remember one time, it was a gruesome situation, middle of the night in southern Mexico, driving at night, which we were not supposed to do because people drive without headlights and whatnot. There had been a terrible vehicle accident. Somebody was burned, and I know he passed away. Most of his body was burned. He was on a flatbed truck as we were driving by. None of us have ever seen anything like that before. And you could see the whites of his eyes, and you could see his burnt hand reaching out for help from us because we were one of the only vehicles driving by. There were people there. We didn't speak the language. We're foreigners. We kept going. But then what do we do about that? Just keep driving and get up the next day? It took time to debrief. People get saved in one evening. 32 people came forward during the When does that happen in your church? That's phenomenal. Let's debrief it. What's it like? How did it happen? What was it work to make that happen? So debrief all along. Study, prayer. Post-field debriefings follow through instead of just follow up or just one debriefing. Ongoing, thoughtful. It's actually what I'm going to say today, the key to long-term impact. Everybody goes on a mission. Everybody comes back with no follow-through, and everybody says the same thing. My life will never be the same. The attrition rate in short-term missions is dismal. For so many. That 1/5 that are not effectively prepared, even less of them are followed through with. So think about an orchard, a grove of fruit or apple trees or whatever we have out here. All the fruit that falls down that's beautiful and amazing just rots into the ground the way we do short-term missions. All that amazing fruit comes back. The ones that are ready to pick, no one's there to pick. It falls to the ground and rots. That's unfortunately a trend in short-term missions. That's why we have a black eye. That's why people are critical of short-term missions. That's why the standards were written. Let's not do that. So I'm going to suggest you change your terminology from training, which for many people is a couple of meetings. Oh, and then we go do our ministry, and we have a debriefing. And instead, start using the term pre-field, on-field, post-field. Okay, that's a big deal. Now, I've got another handout for you, and this time I'm remembering to give it to you. This is called the MISTM grid. You've got it in the slideshow, but I'm also giving it to you as a blank sheet. So protect that one. You can go home and make copies, or you can download it from the Mission Excellence website. But let me unpack it real quick. This is a big, helpful tool for what we're talking about today for all of your short-term mission. Here it is, pre-field, on-field, post-field. That's called the process trilogy. Some academics created this, can you tell? Then we have what's called the participant trilogy, which includes senders, goer guests, and host receivers. That's down the left side. In those three categories, there are several people to think about. In the sending category, you have those who support. That would be babysitters, dog sitters, bosses who give you time off, people who give money, who provide the boots that you need to go to Haiti after the earthquake. Lots of different kinds of people supporting a person going. And then the sending entity itself. So if I'm from First Church on the corner and I'm going on as a midterm worker with Send is part of the sending entity for me. And my church is part of the supporting process or sending. So that's that. Goer guests are not only the ones that are leading, but the ones who are on the team. Everybody's considered a guest, though. No matter where you're going, it's not home. You're a guest somewhere. We've got to get people to think that way. I'm not the boss. I don't know this place the best. It's not my home. I'm just a guest. And then the host receiver, which could be field facilitators or intended receptors. This one's worth a workshop on itself. But there are reasons we've delineated these. Field facilitators could be national or expat or on-field, on-site organizers. They're the facilitator for all this stuff, right? Hopefully it's a combination of both nationals and missionaries, or it's great when it's just nationals if they're good at it. So the intended receptors is the one that's kind of interesting, and that is, let's say you're going to the central Visayas Islands in the Philippines to teach agriculture. And you have a couple of pastors and a missionary who are organizing it, field facilitators. But what are you doing to make sure you meet the needs of the intended receptors, those who are learning how to farm, bank, right? How do they save their money and save their resources to farm again next year and provide for their family? Those are our intended receptors. Some would even say you're a veterinarian team. What about the animals that you're going there? Not only the ones you're teaching how to vet, but the ones who need to be vetted. I don't know how you use that for a verb, but so anyway, that's this grid. Now, what the challenge is for you is take this home when you got a few minutes and you just want to think about it. How am I doing with my short-term mission? What can you put in each quadrant? Because an excellent short-term mission that follows the 7 standards would be able to say, for our Sending supporters, we do something for them after the ministry's over. Most people have nothing to put there. 80% of the mission force probably is the supporters. Only 20% are actually going to the field. They get all the glory. They know how the impact happened. They got to see lives change. But all those who sent money and gave you time off work and watched your house when you're gone know nothing of the mission. So as an excellent ministry, we'd say, well, what are you doing for those people before, during, and after the ministry? Put stuff in there if you've got it. Don't fabricate. You'll probably find, like most people, you're heavy on the go or guest followers, some on pre, and a lot on the on-field. Almost all your listing will go there. Hotel, airfare, raising support, getting their shots, learning some words in Spanish, right? That's where you... Oh, and so here today you've come to an event, to a workshop to hear about this, one of the most neglected categories, the post-field. So all this introductory stuff, now I'm going to finally get to some of the practical stuff, I think. Oh, I got one more that's important. Who's responsible for this whole follow-through thing? We did surveys coast to coast as a part of building the standards of excellence. Churches, mission agencies, missionaries, pastors, team leaders, team members, across the board. Hundreds and hundreds of people are involved in the research behind the standards. This is some of the data that we found out. Who's responsible? The short-termer owns some responsibility for follow-through. They got to take care of themselves when they get back. Makes some sense. The sending entity, the Send International or Wycliffe or whoever did the sending, well, they've got some responsibility, but how much really? Not a whole lot. The receiving entity, well, the people on the other side of the equation here, they live in the Philippines, and they're supposed to do something, I guess, with the hundreds of people they receive. Well, something. The missionary themselves, I guess they're supposed to do. But look at this. Hands down, coast to coast, across all disciplines of mission, the majority of people say that the local church has that responsibility. It's discipleship. It's what churches do with their people. And so it may be that you do youth group, you do Sunday school, you do short-term, you do all these things to move your people to a deeper, more effective life in Christ that influences this planet, this world. So if short-term missions is part of your church's strategy, then church, you better own up to the fact that you've got a job to do on the backside. You can't just send them and say, check it off the list, we have a program. It's going to be that ripe fruit that rots into the ground if you're not careful. Okay. All right. 3 common roadblocks. Now we're turning the gear completely over to just follow through. 3 common roadblocks to follow through. I've heard them all. Lack of time and commitment. My people won't come back. They have sports, they have jobs, they have families, they have roofs that fell in while they were traveling, you know. I set the meeting, but they don't come. So I'm going to give you a couple solutions here. Number 1 is set your dates for your follow-through before you recruit. And promote your short-term mission with those dates on it. What I tell people at my church, yeah, you can have this one actually. It's for you to take home and remember Mission Connection. I tell people when I recruit, when you apply for this mission, if God's calling you to this, you're also signing up for 6 pre-field meetings. You're signing up for the mission itself, all the days required, and these 3 follow-up meetings. If you can't do that, don't bother signing up, because this is a package deal. I don't sound mean when I do it. I'm only trying to say it in one sentence for you all, but it's a part of my program at our church. And everywhere we go, it becomes more and more part of their program. Interesting thing about people, when they make a promise and a full commitment to something, they generally do it. Do they all? Not always, but wow, the results of this are going to be far greater than when you don't have a plan and try to pull people together even just one time after the mission. Okay? So that's number 1. Lack of time and commitment. The way to fix that is set your dates ahead of time. This is working smarter, not harder. You're already working on dates. You're already figuring out airfare. Plunk those debriefing dates in there too. Just get her done. Now it's on the shelf, ready to roll. And promote the trip, making sure people know that's actually part of the requirement. Number 2, roadblock for follow-through is I just don't know what to do. I have no clue where to start. I can Google it, I guess. Most people do the follow-up meeting with ethnic food. It doesn't seem good enough. I don't know what to do. So let me suggest this. Acquire resources, again, before your short-term mission. That's when you have the most energy and zeal. So take a few minutes, set your follow-through dates, get some stuff on your desk. So when 9 months from now debriefing starts, all you have to do is go grab your stuff. I'm going to give you stuff today. And I also would like to say this. We're not very thoughtful about delegating or sharing the load, but there are people who have been before. It might be their next step up. You've already been twice with us. You're not really ready to lead a team. Don't even need a team leader. But what I would like you to do is help me plan the post-field stuff. I got a few things, but if you could plan it and organize it, that'd be great. Why not? Working smarter, not harder. You guys work too hard. I work too hard. I always do everything last minute. I do it when I find out I should have. I don't know how to get to it. I'm doing it at 10 o'clock at night, wishing that we weren't meeting tomorrow. You can solve all that by getting stuff done ahead of time. Number 3. Oh, sorry. Yes, so now I'm going to go ahead and give you some resources. And they're on yours already listed. You don't have to write these down. I can't talk about all of them, but they're really cool things. This is statistically the 7 common pitfalls for short-termers when they come home. And this doesn't matter if it was a couple or an individual for 2 years, or if it was a team of 25 from the youth group in your church who went for 4 days. They all struggle with this. They come back me-centered. Let me tell you how God changed my life and how God used me to change all of Mexico forever. Oh, and let me tell you, Mexican people, I know all about them now too, right? They just want to talk and talk and talk. They have a self-righteous attitude, like they've been doing something that's better than everyone else, and poor you. Maybe someday you'll catch up with where I am spiritually. Now, I'm being sort of, there's satire in that, but I see nodding. You know you've seen it happen with people where there's just this little edge. Makes it hard to relate when they come home. Breaking all the rules. This one I love. We really encourage everyone to be in the Word every day. And we also have a rule. We only have 3 rules on our short-term mission trips, also worth a whole workshop. But rule number 1 is no complaining. Period. Philippians 2:14 and 15. Do everything without complaining or arguing, so that you may become blameless and innocent. Children of God above reproach in a crooked and depraved generation in which you're going to shine like a star in the universe. Think about the white star against a black backdrop of a sky. That's how dramatically different a non-complainer is from everyone else. And it says in there, it's for the sake of outreach. It is part of my witness on this planet to be full of joy and hope and contentment. Where do I get the contentment part? The same letter, still in Philippians. Paul says, I've learned the secret of doing anything and everything. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can go without my favorite coffee and my newspaper every morning for a month or a week or a year through Christ who strengthens me. I don't have to complain. I don't have to say this stupid church, this stupid culture, my team leader, what a drag. This does not honor the Lord. It is not good mission. But so when I say no more complaining and you have to be in the Word every day, and sometimes people come back from the short-term mission field going, whew, now I can tell people what I really think. The rule is done. The trip's over. But remember, my goal is missional Christians, not just a short-term mission. So I want to teach them in my training why the Bible talks about not complaining and why it's possible and who I turn to with my discomforts. It's not that everything is comfortable. It's what you do with the fact. I teach them that so they don't come home and break the rules. Quiet time every day? Whew, now I don't have to. So that's what they're saying. They come home and they're like, can't wait to stop doing all the good things. Talking incessantly about your experience. How was your trip? And people just like turn you off. And then you get frustrated and disillusioned with the church. Post short-term mission blues. There's nothing wrong with those. But people do have that happen. They found affection, camaraderie, and people where they just loved them no matter what, where they come back home and people don't love them that way. They know their history and they don't feel loved anymore. And they're like, oh, I'm so depressed. Mountaintop experiences are to be expected with short-term missions, but what you don't want people coming back is struggling with that and having no one talk to them about it or walk them through it. And it's okay to wait for the next mission trip if your heart is right for the next mountaintop. We all do that with everything in life. We keep moving to the next peak, right? How about a reverse culture shock? Most people prepare a long time to go to another culture but forget what it's going to be like to come back to their own. And they come back and they're very critical of our culture. Materialistic, selfish, I'll never be the same again. But then like a month later they buy a brand new BMW because their friend has one that's also, you know what I mean? How do I teach them? And how do I prepare them for coming back home? And what do I do with them in the post-field season to help them embrace our culture and reach out to it in a different way that's not lording over something but grace-filled? And then unresolved conflict among team members. Man, I'll tell you, especially, I used to do all teams with people from all over the place. And everybody's on their best behavior. Now I'm doing stuff with schools and churches, and they all know each other, and they're already mad at each other, some of them, when they come on these teams, right? And things that rubbed them the wrong way really rub them the wrong way, and now they can't wait for the trip to be over and just not spend time together. Oh, that's God-honoring. So the people are saying, yeah, I come back from my trip sometimes, and I just can't wait to not have to see so-and-so anymore. Well, that's a problem. So these are pitfalls that people who have been on short-term missions say, teach us. Guide us. Now you've got some material. You want to know what to prepare for this coming summer or whenever you do your short-term missions? Dig into a couple of those. Find a few resources on these topics and be ready. Easy. Do it first, set it on your desk, and wait and see what happens. The next list I'm going to give you came out of the same research. 10 issues that everyone faces when they get back again to the reverse culture shock. Number 1 on this list. These are in order of priority, okay? Number 1, they come back saying they were so happy there with so little. And people here are so spoiled. Yep, it's true. And you're one of the spoiled people. And truth be told, if you had to live like they live, you wouldn't be happy. And anyway, they don't think of themselves as happy with or without. They've found their hope and joy in something else. So, how do you walk them through all that? Spiritual warfare. Man, the devil's going to do everything he can. He may not know what your future holds, but he knows what you went through. I don't know if he gets the future, but he knows what's going on enough to come in and wreak havoc in your life so that all of this good cannot possibly blossom into anything better. People aren't prepared for that. You can help them with that. The spiritual disciplines. How do I have a quiet time? Where do I go to church? What should I do in my... God's perspective on life. Now I don't know what to do. I thought I wanted to be an architect. This is my story. I was already in the School of Architecture. I was going to be a wealthy architect. I had to have my Porsche, maybe 2. I wanted houses in different climates that I designed. I was definitely after architecture, money, and stuff. And God got a hold of my heart during a short-term mission. And I didn't know what to do with it. Come home. What? Nobody was there. Nobody was there. Because everybody else was working on the next mission trip or on to their jobs and other things. God's will for my life relates to that. How do I fit in? What are my gifts? I'll give you some examples, I think, today on that. Marriage and family. My wife wants to go, but I don't. I feel called to missions. He doesn't. We want to go, but our kids are really young. Can we? So this was another thing that came up. Biblical stewardship. All this stuff about spoiled and people who have poverty, and now I don't know what to do. I got money on my credit card. I drive a car that's too fancy. I don't know what to do with my wealth, my money. Life's unresolved hurts and pains. This one's a weird one. I did not see this one coming. 19 years old, went on a mission trip, came back, and lo and behold, his parents were still fighting. And actually, while he was gone, decided they're divorcing, and Dad's not home now. You get so separated in life, you kind of shut everything else off and live this current reality, and it's life-giving, and you come back to the same pain, the same hurt, the same relationships. How do we help our people do that? And then the impact of friends. The kind of friends I had. I just took a young man from Phoenix, actually, on a trip with me to Slovenia in July and August. Came back. I just had lunch with him 2 days ago. How's it going? His name's Julio. How's it going? He goes, well, I decided to change all my friend circles since I got back. Because I realized the kind of man I want to be is the people I was spending time with. If I want to become God's man, I got to start hanging out with these people. Right? That's a big shift. And thankfully someone was there to walk him through that and make that recommendation. Some to do some of his own, but some help again. This is what you can help people with. This is what they are saying they struggle with when they come home from short-term missions. Now you can't say, I don't know what to do. Now you have to say, for my people, for my time, for my gifting, and those resources around me, what if this might fit? And I always say less is more. I'll bring it up again on one of my last slides. Don't think you can be ready for all of this. But at least now you're aware. And if you run into some of this and you weren't ready, you're not surprised. You actually can then try to find something called Mission Excellence. We got something for all of this. Okay, ideas to help you plan. I didn't mean to get teary-eyed on that one. Now my nose is running. Ideas to help you plan. These are just a few quickies. We got 20, 30 of these. But first of all, encourage your people to come back and serve. I get really frustrated with people that say, well, the only opening they have is in the nursery. Oh, so I guess we're above serving just anywhere. You can only do like highfalutin things. Serve somewhere. And it might be for a season. It might be going on to a missions committee. I don't know what. But get them doing that, serving in the community as well. In fact, one of the churches, I was really sad about this. They helped a lot of Katrina with the rebuild of devastated homes after hurricane. That kind of stuff happens around the country. It's not always hurricanes. It could be a fire. It could be the washing machine floods and half of the house is destroyed and the widow doesn't know what to do. So this church, Foursquare Church in this case, said, well, we did all that in Katrina. They sent like 7 teams over the first year. Why are we not doing this in our own community? So they contacted their, their community center, the government that leads the community, and said, can we help with that? And they're like, are you kidding me? You would do that? And they're like, yeah. I don't know how many people now, they've rebuilt laundry rooms or garages or home remodels or clean-outs. They're actually doing it in their own town now. That's pretty cool. So serving in the church, you don't have to go to Kenya and call that your mission trip. You can do it anywhere. Missional Christians again, right? Have team members recruit mentors. This is a cool example. I didn't bring it with you. It is on the Mission Excellence website. It's a free download. How many short-termers what is it called, Red Rocks Church, Red Mountain? How many short-termers do you send out in 1 year? 20?
Teams or people?
People. Give or take, just rough.
25, 30.
25, okay, so 25 people. You do that for 4 years. That's 80 people, because you got some repeat. 80, how are you guys going to manage follow-through for 80 people over 4 years? You're not. Working smarter, not harder. Get every one person to have one person, and give that mentor the tool they need to do a good job, pre-field, on-field, post-field. Now, I really struggled for a while. How do I know? Well, I'll get to the triage thing in a minute. But the mentor thing is cool. This mentor guide, free download on MissionConnexion.Global. You can just go into the search thing and under resources and do mentor guide and print it out. It has 6 different meetings, if you will, built in, and it'll help anybody who goes, I don't know if I can be a mentor, go, oh, I guess I could. There's all the questions to ask. And they're the ones who can come to you and say, I think you have a troubled situation on your hands. Or, I've got someone, I think, who's supposed to go to the mission field, and they don't know what to do. Wouldn't that be a big help for you? They're vetting that for you, in other words. Pretty cool idea. 150-word article for you churches is especially good. This one doesn't relate in the same way. I could actually for Send International as well. Give your short-termer the assignment, I need a 150-word article from you by a certain date. So I put on here, it's a triple benefit. It does create a pathway for follow-through. It's making them think something. And what I always ask them to do is write about how God used you to affect someone's life, or how God used someone to affect your life. It's the only assignment you've got, one or the other. Now they got to sit and think, how did God use me to affect someone? Who did impact me? That's a debriefing technique. Get them thinking about the benefit, the perk. Even if it was a hard trip, they can still come up with that. But the cool thing with this now is you have this tool in place. It'll give you the possibility of a quote or two for your follow-through as you report back to your church. You just have a stack of papers here with a whole bunch of written stuff in it. You don't have to come up with it. Get it out in a flyer, get it out in the bulletin, on your church newsletter, whatever. Little quotes about how it went. Now you're helping on the follow-through side of sending supporters. The other thing is it can help you with recruiting next year. You have, again, this whole cadre of testimony to grab from instead of you going, well, I don't really know what story to tell. Usually last minute before you just start recruiting. Now you can go to your file. 3x5 cards. This one was a cool one. 5 questions. Right? They're almost always different for me, but one of the ones this is with big groups. If you guys do all your 25 at once, that's a lot of time if everybody has to share stuff. So what I do is I give everybody a short 3x5 card, and I say you get 1 or 2 words for these answers on each of my questions. The first one is, give the name of someone who you know was deeply impacted by the timing of your ministry, and it could be someone on the team or someone in the field where you were. Just a name. Pause, let them think, they write down their name. What was the Bible passage that reached out to you most while you were on your mission? Pre-field, on-field, or post-field? 5 questions. It forces them to think. Now I say, okay, everybody, we're going to go around the room. Just tell me the name of the person. Bob, John, Bob, Frida, Bob. I'm not the sharpest crayon in the box, but I'm starting to see a trend here. So we get all the way around the room, and I say, you know what's interesting? Why don't you guys tell me about Bob? And the group starts to process together what happened with Bob. Not too many dry eyes in the house. Working smarter, not harder. That was pretty effortless for me. Simple. It kept it all in the same room. Somebody had a problem with Bob and didn't realize this much ministry happened, and it changed her life. To hear this, as much as it also helped everybody just rejoice in what God had accomplished in them and in him. Right? Smarter, not harder. So 3x5 cards, super easy. Evaluations. These are always smart to do, but not always done well. If you do it this way, and I actually got this from a lady from Santa Cruz, California, one of the predominant comments on her evaluation was that she was very upset with us for the amount of legroom she had on the aircraft from here to Europe. How does that help you? And how does that help her? If I'm raising up missional Christians, I can do all things through Christ. I don't want to get into that kind of stuff, and I don't want them to try to help me fix things I can't fix. So make sure your evaluations are short and punctuated to the things that actually have value for you and for the goer. That's what I want to say. We do have some samples of those if you want to look at them, at least one. But you can do the same thing. Give it a try. But just try not to feed that self-serving, I want what I want culture that we live in. Spiritual gifts assessment, you can get those for free or low cost. The Strength Finders 2.0 does cost like $12 a piece. There's the flag page. What are your top gifts, your passions? Do some of those. People love to find out more about themselves. So when you're all done with your short-termers, whether they're individuals, couples, or groups, get them through some of these kinds of gift assessment things. They love it. I heard of this, a group that had been serving in Central America. Around Thanksgiving time, they prepared a photo book from Costco or somewhere, pictures of the whole trip, and then they wrote some stuff, and they put a bunch of stuff in a package that was typical for us during Thanksgiving. Nowhere else has Thanksgiving, only we do. People are fascinated by this rare event we hold, right? They sent it in time for our Thanksgiving, but there to say thank you to the field. Full of testimonies, pictures, and Thanksgiving gifts to say thank you. Nice little effort, helps your people, helps strengthen the partnership between you and the field. Planning a 6-month report to donors and using your short-termer to do it. Another little technique. Take on some language classes at your church. Our church was doing a ton in Italy. Like for 20 years we've been doing stuff in Italy. So when we get teams going, we have beginner Italian courses that we schedule at our church. And for those who come back going, I really want to keep learning, we let the class go on. Working smarter, not harder. Someone else does that for us. But okay. The third common roadblock, and I think I'm getting close to being able to end this here. How are we doing on time?
You're at
2:23 seconds, 7-8 minutes to go. Okay. Not knowing how much to do and with whom. So I'm going to use your guys as an example again. You got 25 people at your disposal this year who are going to do a short-term mission. How much do you do with each one of them, and to which ones? That's a tricky one. I'm going to suggest you go with something called triage. And since the age of most of you in this room is such, you'll remember MASH, the TV series. Do you remember that? You're probably one of the youngest in here. Do you remember it? You guys remember it, right? Can you hum the tune? Da, 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 da. Okay. They would do triage. This is what I first learned about as a young person. When the helicopters and jeeps come in with the wounded, there's a doctor on triage. Essentially, this is the dark side of the analogy. This one's going to die anyway. This one's going to live whether we treat them right away or not. This one is needing care now. We can save them. So they got like 3 groups they go to, right? I'm like, well, that's a really interesting philosophy for our short-termers, though hopefully no one's dying. But I could probably divide up according to a system of priorities and use my resources where needed most. So I call it triage for follow-through. Application, determine different levels for your short-termers. Again, this is what you do before you start recruiting for your mission. And you can have the same stuff every year if you're going to stick with it. Smarter, not harder. But get some different things ready for different levels. So let's go back to our analogy of the 100 people, right? Deciding who fits what category, for me, was a trick. And we wanted to hire a company that would do the psychological assessment. They fill out certain things, push submit, and lo and behold, it tells... Well, anyway, some of the people on one of our committees, we were meeting, I think at the time, either in Chicago or Denver, they finally said, why don't we just ask the people which group they fit in? Are you going to go on a long-term mission, do you think? Well, yeah. Okay, well, that tells me you're this kind. Are you going to go on another mission? Never. Okay, well, you're in this group. Now I got it figured out. So you can use your evaluations. You also can use, as I wrote up here, your own interaction and your own, you can deduce as well with many of them. So we don't need to overcomplicate it. But what if you have 3 categories of stuff prepared before the ministry starts? And remember, less is more. I told you I'd say that again. Sort of a baseline that applies to everyone. Make sure that they have their follow-through meetings. Make sure that you ask them to share certain things. Maybe it's the 150-word article. Everybody does this, okay? And they report to the church or they report to their mission, whatever they have to do. That's for everybody. But I want to have a couple more things in my pocket. Some books to read, a conference to attend or whatever for those who are thinking midterm. And maybe 1 or 2 more things. Like, I'm going to make sure if I got anybody who's going to be a long-termer, they're going to Urbana. And I really want them to be at Mission Connection. So that's my thing. So I get this ready, kind of on autopilot for everybody. Now I really only have to babysit a few people. In this case, part of the 7, which includes the 2. So your 25 just became maybe some high-level or high-maintenance care for 3. Everybody got the same thing, but these 3 are going to get somebody from your church to pay close attention to them and move them to the next space. Let them lead a team next year. Train them for that. Get them to Mission Connection next year. Have them read missionary biographies. I don't know. Whatever you pick. Just a few things. Get them on your desk. Just have them ready for the rest of this year so when the time comes, you can do it. Okay? So that's triage. That takes care of to whom and how much. Get a few things ready for the different levels. Make sure everybody gets the baseline, and you're good to go. I know it sounds easy when I just say it up here, doesn't it? But you just have to go back and think a little bit. I think in an hour, You could sort of have a pseudo plan together, look for a few things, make the copies, and put them on somebody's shelf, whoever does this for your church or your school or your organization. Just spend a couple hours, get it done now. In, what is this month? November? And then you're really ready. Why not? It's fresh. Okay? I'm going to close with this verse and then see if you have any unique questions. Such confidence we have through Christ toward God, not that we are adequate in ourselves to consider anything that's coming from ourselves, but our adequacy comes from Him. So I share that verse at the end because I am a perfectionist. I am a high achiever. I'm a checklist guy. And if there are 7 standards and 44 key quality indicators, and I should have all this stuff ready to do all, I want to do it all. And it will kill me. And I have to remember, God actually doesn't need me. He doesn't need me for this. He's decided to use me. He's willing to use me. Then I got to say, well, He doesn't need me to think of everything I have to do. I just need to listen to Him. Because my adequacy to be good at what I'm doing is only going to come from Him. So my encouragement to you today, the typical hummingbird fire hose analogy is what happens in workshops, right? It's like, wow, it's a lot to take in. Please don't stress. Your adequacy is not in you, and it's not because of what I said. It's going to come from Him anyway. So let that be just a word of blessing. And now, leveraging a mission trip for lifelong commitment. You know how lifelong commitment happens from a mission trip? Excellent follow through. And have I given you some tools to use to help leverage that, I hope? I see some thoughtful nods. The trick, of course, is figuring out which ones you're going to do and how to apply it. But let me just see if you have any questions in the last 5 minutes here. Now, it always happens when I mention that, okay? They are not patent pended or whatever you want. They're not copyrighted, so have them if you want them. Number 1 is no complaining, but please make sure you train the whole theology around it. Because what most people do is they say, well, I can't tell anybody what I'm feeling, and they stuff it, and they explode from time to time. There's not been a heart change. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's number 1, and we will send people home for being chronic complainers because we've trained on it. You have all the power of heaven to accomplish this simple request in Scripture for His sake and the sake of outreach. So if you can't get it, we don't need that poison for the last 8 days of our trip. Bye-bye. And I've done that before. Pardon me?
I sent a lady home for complaining.
It's poison. It is, and the Bible knew that. That's why they said it says in there. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is you do everything you're asked. Period. Which is a tricky thing because when one of my early experiences in southern Mexico, I had to mix concrete, and it was the wrong place, wrong amount of ingredients. Took all day. They gave me enough ingredients for like 7 projects, and we used barely any of it. And the next day, it was all hardened in what would be the driveway of this little house. Why weren't they thinking? I mean, but I needed to do what they asked me to do. I'm in Mexico. I'm not here to fix Mexico. I'm not here to teach them. I don't have to order a truck like I do it. I just do what I'm asked. So do what you're asked. But again, it comes back to the theology behind that. And the third one for us, because we have so many young people, is leave every place cleaner than you found it. More commonly, for churches now, we use one called live out loud. Everything you do needs to appear above reproach, full of grace and love. So if it's leaving a place cleaner, if it's what you eat, all those things, live out loud. Live so that people see Christ in everything you do. So however you want to do that, you can make up your own variation. The no complaining one, though, that has set our teams apart from most teams everywhere we've ever been. People halfway through a mission trip that have hosted lots of teams will say, why are your people so different? I'm like, well, I think this might be part of it. Like, it's true. They've never complained to me or our people. They eat everything. They do everything. They're just a joy. I'm like, missional Christians. It comes in the training, though. And then we follow through to make sure they know how to apply that to life, not just to the mission trip. You don't just give up on it because the trip's over. Other questions? Comments? Affirmations? Contradictions? I'll take anything. We've got 3 minutes.
A lot of information. It's the unpacking process.
Yeah. And you'll remember the less is more, right? Pick a few. You can add more next year and the year after. Yeah, and MissionExcellence.Global, you can find some stuff there, but you can also reach out to us. We're Pacific Coast time, and you also have Jake, who's on our staff. He's here. He's not as tied to the excellence part. He is excellent, but he's more tied to the connections part. But he actually has easy access to us, so please, that's what we're here for, is to help you with tools, order, whatever. Okay. I'll stay around here for just a couple more minutes, but let me just pray for you guys before we end. Father, thank you for time together. As is typical with an hour, appreciate is true. There's kind of a lot of information, a lot of ideas, a lot of philosophy, and I pray that it would just settle into the hearts and minds of each that are here now, and just the level and the pathway that you have for them. Not all of it, but the things that matter for the people they work with. I thank you for the churches that are represented, and pray that they would become more and more about missional living, and that the short-termer possibility is one of those things that really feeds that. I pray for Send International. I think the only organization here, thank you, God, for the impact they've had worldwide, but among my organization and those that we serve repeatedly, as Don and others from Send show up and teach and lead where we are. I'm just really grateful for all these guys here, for everything they represent. But to you goes the glory. Pray that you'd help us to be faithful and humble and hardworking and available, trusting you for the outcomes. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.